of the air traffic control computer crash, which has caused chaos to this day. They're saying there are still 200,000 Brits trapped aboard, stranded abroad. And for some, this awful saga may even go on for 2 weeks. They may get stranded for 2 weeks because of this. Seems like a pretty bad air traffic control computer system that we've got. Let's talk to former air traffic controller, and she's now editor of Turning Less for Less, something that I've never known happen. Usually when you turn left on an aeroplane, it's for more. Let's talk to Michelle Robson. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
Now, let's talk about this. You're a former air traffic controller. Now, much has been said about this computer system. Willie Walsh, former British Airways boss, has waded in today and said, well, you know, why can't this system be better? We're hearing it may be because a French flight crew fed in an erroneous flight plan and that caused the whole system to crash. Well, you know, something needs to be done about that. So, you know, that's just a little bit of, tiny bit of human error that should be guarded against. I gather that our computer system for air traffic control is pretty ancient anyway. And when it crashed, there's supposed to be a backup system. They sort of threw the switch to the backup system, and guess what? That didn't work either. It's not good enough, is it?
Well, actually, I'll just talk you through what actually happened, because I think there's a couple of bits that I can make a bit clearer. So the system actually failed at around 8:30 in the morning, but everyone was completely oblivious at that point, apart from obviously people at the air traffic control centres. What happens is when a flight plan comes in, like we believe happened, that's in an incorrect format, it will have to have quite a few different errors in it, and we believe it's something they'd never seen before. Obviously, it's one of those things, you don't know what you don't know, so they weren't expecting this, and normally the computer would just return it and reject it.
Exactly.
And say, like, that's not correct, and it didn't happen. So basically the flight planning system went into an error state, but at that point they do have a backup, and the backup did kick in, which is why there were no delays in the morning, but it only has 4 hours worth of data. So for 4 hours they can work completely normally and nobody's any the wiser. Unfortunately, the failure went on far longer than any other failure, pretty much. I think the last really bad one was in about 10 years ago. So at that point, when they run out of data, they have no other option except to go manual, which involves inputting all the flight plans individually by a human instead of being transferred directly. So although some of the systems are quite old, the actual air traffic system that the controllers are using is actually very modern and has lots of interesting features like conflict detection that automatically warns them, you know, as much as 10 minutes in advance that they need to do something. So it is a modern system, but it's lots of different systems that are all connected together, which obviously creates some issues. But the main issue with this was it is something that hasn't been seen before. And as I said, you don't know what you don't know. So it wasn't something that they were aware of.
OK, well, let's hope that they improve the system so they don't see it again. I would have thought that any computer system ought to have the capacity, if I file in something that doesn't compute with it, if I can put it that way, it ought to have a way of rejecting that without completely crashing. You know, one flight plan erroneously filled in crashes the whole system. I would suggest that's not good enough. Now, the boss in charge of this, chief executive of NATS, the National Air Traffic Control System, a guy called Martin Rolfe, he's 51. He gets a basic salary of £477,000 a year. Over the past year, it was boosted by a £281,000 annual bonus and pension and benefits, backdated £555,000 incentive plan. So he earned £1.3 million last year. No one's bemoaning the fact that he gets a decent salary. He's got a very, very high pressure, important job. But given what's going on right now, do you think he should hand his bonus back?
Well, I think it's a question that always arises when there's a big failure in a company and we start looking at the CEO's salaries. Obviously, the salary and the bonus that he's getting is something that was pre-agreed for previous performance. It's not related to what's gone on this year. So I think he should certainly be paid it, because contractually they'll have to give it to him. But obviously he does have an option to perhaps say, OK, we've had a major failure here that's resulted in a lot of pain for travellers. So perhaps he could say he won't accept accept part of it. We'll wait and see what he does. But going back to your point about, we don't begrudge him the money. I think if you look at what people in similar positions get, let's take John Holland Kay, who is the outgoing Heathrow CEO. They're predicting he might get up to £5 million this year as his final salary. So it's a fraction of what other people in similar positions get. It's rather low paid because obviously it's still partly owned by the government. So I think it's fair what he gets, and they don't really have much option but to pay him. But obviously he's at liberty to say, actually, I won't take part of it.
I know where you're coming from. It's fair what he gets. It's fair what the Heathrow guy gets in terms of the massive amounts of money that bosses always do get. I don't think it's fair on a general basis. These people are paid way, way, way too much, and it's an insult to all the ordinary workers who have to struggle on ordinary salaries. But that's not his fault. They are paid on a scale that I think is ludicrous. But that's another issue. Last question, Michelle, if you don't mind, not about air traffic control, but you've got the same old story. The airlines, when things go wrong, passengers are stranded, flights are cancelled, become absolutely hopeless, like foxes caught in the headlights. They never seem to be able to help anyone. No one can get hold of them. The biggest complaint you have from passengers is, we can't find out any information. Why can't the airlines raise their game about these disasters into which they should step and help, but they don't?
Well, I think there's two things that are an issue here. One is the number of staff. Now, obviously, they can't have, hundreds of extra staff in the off chance that these, maybe once a year or even less events happen. But I think what they could do is improve the IT system. So what we're seeing at the moment is we're generally, and myself included, advising people to go to the website, to use the app, because a lot of things you can do in a self-service basis. But unfortunately, most of the airlines' websites are actually struggling because there's so many people trying to actually get new flights because they can't get through on the phone, that a lot of problems. British Airways, I know, has had quite a few issues where people complaining they can't actually get into the website or the app because it's literally the volume of people. And I think if you look at what's happening in America, where they tend to have a lot of weather disruption, there's actually United's a good example where they've improved their app so much that they can actually book a hotel for the night. So if they're disrupted, instead of having to find someone to speak to, you can actually book yourself a hotel overnight whilst you wait for your replacement flight. So it can be done. The airlines just want to obviously invest some money, which we all know they don't like to spend money. So
No, I mean,
it'll be interesting to see if this causes the issue.
Yeah, well, I think it might, but you never know. Listen, Michelle, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much. That was Michelle Robson, editor of Turning Left for Less and a former air traffic controller.